Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host, Taylor, and I hope you guys are all having a wonderful, wonderful week. I hope you guys have taken some time to take care of yourselves and hopefully catch up on some of these episodes. Last week, we covered a new topic that we've never talked about before, about hunting, and today we're going to talk about a new topic again, something we've never discussed on the pod, and I'm very, very excited about it. So I have this wonderful book here that I'm holding called Sissy, and it is a coming of gender story. So today we're going to talk with Jacob, a gender nonconforming writer, producer, and performer based in LA, as well as a member of both the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the Ouch 100. Jacob's writing and advocacy has been featured by MSNBC, The New York Times, The Guardian, Teen Vogue, so many more. Jacob has worn heels in the White House twice, and Sissy is their debut memoir. And I'm so excited to get talking on this topic. And I honestly, I can't even express how excited I am because it's just something we've never talked about before, and I feel like it's going to be so important to address some of these things around masculinity, and the book is just absolutely amazing, and I can't even speak highly enough of how wonderful of a person Jacob is. So without any more intro, we can get started, and welcome, Jacob, to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi, Taylor.
It's been a long time coming. We met back in, that was like January?
Yeah, it was like January, February at this really chic Spotify cosmic playlist event with my friend Chani Nicholas.
Yes.
Who's this like badass queer astrologer who just like knows what the universe needs for me before I know what I need for myself.
Yeah. And I remember, I'm pretty sure my boyfriend had asked you, like, oh, how did you know who she is or something? And you were like, that's like that's like a induction into being gay that you know who she is or something like that.
Yeah, basically, it's like you kind of like when you get your gay card in the mail, you also get a subscription. Like you automatically followed Chani Nicholas on the internet.
Yes.
Yeah. She's just like the go-to astrologer for all of the queer and trans babies and beyond.
Yeah. I feel like I did briefly mention with her about coming on the pod, and I feel like I still definitely need to have her on because there's so many things that happen in my life, and then I'm like, oh, Mercury was just in retrograde? Like, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, what else was going on?
Right. I also know that Chani has like a very interesting kind of like non-prescriptive approach to astrology. Like it's like even the way she approaches astrology is super dynamic. I can't do it justice because I ain't her.
Yeah.
But I just know that it's really great. She's a cherished friend.
Yeah.
When I first met her, she was wearing this like incredible black lace gown that was like black lace over basically her whole body, like kind of like see-through. And it was
okay.
It was honestly like one of the sexier things I've ever observed in person.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're an astrologer and you're also wearing head to toe black lace. Like, you're my friend now.
Yes. We need to make this happen.
Oh, also, like, worth noting, Lizzo was performing the night we met, too.
Yeah.
Which anytime you have, like, literally the stars aligned because, you know, Chani was there. And then Lizzo performed to bless our friendship. And then here we are.
Yep. I mean, it was a magical night, to say the least.
Truly. And I got some free crystals. It was great.
Yeah, my crystals are actually right here on my windowsill.
Oh my God, mine too. I have a whole little box of them because I took a gajillion because there were just like a bunch of leftovers.
Yeah, there were a ton there, and I was like,
what am I supposed to look at all of them?
Oh my God. You literally have a full little box of crystals.
It's just really cute because I was just like, look, like if no one's going to take these, like I'm taking them.
Yeah. So right after that, I actually went to Vegas for a bachelorette party and I had all my little crystals in the bag. And then someone told me that you're actually not supposed to have your crystals like all next to each other. Like they're supposed to be like separated, like that there's like different energies in them. And so you're not supposed to have them all together. And I was like, well,
clearly I'm a fuck up. Oops. I just threw them all in a box together. I was like, they look so pretty in a little box.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad that our paths crossed and that we met that night. You also then came to Seattle. Since then, I remember actually when we met that night, you were like, I have a book coming out. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you should come on the podcast and we should talk about it. And since then, you've been on like quite a fucking ride.
Oh my God, yeah. It's been truly the way I describe. So my book tour, I was in 12 different cities in 16 days.
Oh my God.
Including an appearance on The Daily Show.
Yeah, which just a moment for, like...
It was like, honestly, I've never had a sexier night in my entire life. Because Trevor Noah...
Yeah.
He's just delicious on a level that is beyond human. Like, it's almost divine, you know?
Yeah. I mean... Even you put earrings on him, actually. You gifted him earrings. And
yeah, I gave him little clip-ons because I was like, baby, I need everyone. He didn't know the term. It was so funny. So backstage, I was like, because you meet when you do a late night show, I say as if I've done a bunch.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. On the late night show run.
Yeah, when you do late night, when you're on the circuit, you chill in the dressing room. Mm-hmm. You get all ready, your hair makeup, and then, which by the way, you have to pay for. No one tells you that part. No one tells you if you want a hair and makeup team, you got to pay for it yourself. I was like, excuse me, Comedy Central. And then I was like, it's fine, but I am going to call you out on this later.
Yeah. That's weird that they wouldn't provide that. Interesting.
Right. I'm like, I'm about to go on like a television show with like way more cameras than Jesus and just like intense lights. And aren't y'all invested in making me look good? And they were like, nah, sorta. And I was like, okay, well, I'll hire my team. So anyway, so you get your hair and makeup done, and then you wait backstage, and then like in your green room, and then the host comes by for just like a quick second. So Trevor came by for like 2 minutes, and you don't talk for very long because you want to save the good stuff, right? Like it needs to feel fresh when you're actually talking on stage, but you talk enough to kind of get acclimated and to not feel like you've never spoken to this person before in your life. And so while we're backstage, or while we're in the green room, I'm just kind of like, so Trevor, I have an idea for tonight, because the producers didn't bring up this idea. It was very much my idea. And they said, like, you can run it by him, and whatever he wants to do, you got to do. And I was like, fair. So I was like, so I brought little gifts for you, and I want to do some gender fucking on your show tonight.
Yeah.
And he did not know the term gender fucking, which in my brain, I think everyone knows the term gender fucking because it's just fucking around with gender, right? Like it's not sexual. I mean, like it can involve like cute clothes that are sexy, but it's not like sexual. It's just like fucking around with gender, having a good time, playing with gender. I thought that was sort of implied. He did not get that. He immediately thought I was like hitting on him with some weird trans sex thing. And I was just sort of like, oh no.
Like what he hears is like, you want to have sex with me?
And I was like, well, that's not untrue, but but that's not what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm not actually hitting on you on your own, like in the green room on your own show. I mean, I'm not hitting on you like that. Like, I don't want to. I
feel like if that was to work, then like, yeah, let's go that way. But
right, like if consent is like active here, like if we're both having some enthusiastic consent moments, then like you know, we can talk about what you're doing after the show because I don't have fucking plans. Like, you know, but anyway, so then I had to sort of backtrack and be like, oh, so you don't know that term. Oh, gender fucking just means like, you know, it means playing around with gender. It means experimenting with gender. It means having a good time. So I brought you some lipstick, and I was hoping I could give you a little tutorial about how to put it on TV. And he was like, honestly, I am the child of a single mother. I have worn lipstick before in my life. Any child of a single mother will have worn lipstick at some point. I don't like it. And I was like, fair. He was like, I don't even like kissing somebody with lipstick on. And I was just like sitting there in lipstick, like, okay, fine. You didn't have to go that far, Trevor. Like, fuck you. Or, you know,
I'm like, okay, Trevor, no lipstick. Okay, now does that mean we can kiss?
Lipstick off literally right now. Yeah, like, how do you feel about this? Like, what about a gloss? What about like a light, like a tint, you know? But anyway, so like, you know, he was like, no on the lipstick. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I also brought some clip-ons for you, just as a little gift. But maybe I can give those to you during the segment. And he was like, oh, all right, we can do that. And I was just like, we can. And then I was like, this is the greatest day of my life. And so I take out the little earrings and like a cute little, just like a little like, you know, sort of see-through, like white baggy, you know, it's not like a plastic bag. It's like a nice cloth bag, but like you can still see him. So I take them out and they're unclasped because it's TV. So I was like, I don't want to have to fiddle with getting the clasps open. So I, you know, like ready to wear. And I take it out and like, you know, we're doing our interview and like mid-interview, I'm like, oh, I have a present for you. And I, you know, and I make it the joke about gender fucking, which was fun because then they bleeped it on the show. And my only dream in life is just to be that trans lady who gets bleeped all the time. I just want to be that non-binary activist who also can't stop saying fuck on live television.
I mean,
like, that's my dream.
Yeah.
You know, like if they ever ask me to host SNL, I'll be fucked because it'll happen and they won't get it fast enough. And I'll be like, I'm so sorry.
People always ask before they like come on and record, they're like, oh, like it's like language. I'm like, you can say whatever you want. Like we're keeping it real. Like just don't want you to feel like you have to censor yourself. I can barely even censor myself. So fuck it.
Yeah. Like I always have trouble with like every interview, always like, and what I end up doing, like the problem with live interviews is that you can't like, cause like yesterday I was doing an interview with like for a documentary that Nightly News is doing for like Stonewall 50th anniversary. Like it's the 50th anniversary of this big LGBTQ riot that kicked off the LGBT rights movement in the 1960s. And they're doing a documentary about sort of the 50-year anniversary of it. And I was interviewing with Nightly News, but luckily it wasn't live. So I could just be like, yeah, and I just don't get, wait, can I say fuck? And she's like, no, you can't say fuck. And I'm like, okay, fuck. Okay, I just don't, and then I rephrase it. And then I'll be like, yeah, these fucking people, these people are full of bullshit. Wait, can I say shit? And she'll be like, no, you can't say shit. And I'll be like, sorry, okay. And then I have to like redo the sentence. But the problem is generally I say the word and even asking whether or not I can say the word. And I'm a mess when it comes to censorship.
It's
but
like,
anyway.
Go ahead.
So I give him the earrings on the show, right? And I take them out of the little bag. And then my favorite moment of the entire interview, and it's not the most impactful moment. It is not the most politically vital moment, but it is the moment that was most meaningful to me. Is that like a cat, Trevor is not excited about the earrings as much as he's excited about the bag. He's literally like, oh, and they have a little baggie. And he does this little dance with the bag. And he's like a 5-year-old just being like, oh, I got a little bag. And that little moment, like, alone will give me spiritual nourishment for the next 30 years of my career. Like, even if I fuck up completely for the rest of my life, which will not happen, but if that were the case, I would be like, it's fine because I got to give Trevor Noah a little baggie and watch him get like be filled with childlike glee playing with this like cute little cloth bag. It was everything. And then he put on the clip-ons and looked fucking incredible. So.
Yeah. And made a great point that, like, in his culture, you know, back home, that would be considered normal. And his grandma would be very excited.
Yeah, and his grandma would be like, you look so traditional.
Yeah.
And whereas, like, for me, they're like, you look like a queen.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, that was the other thing that was so cool is he just, like, successfully decolonized gender in, like, 20 seconds flat. And I was like, wow. I'm like, I thought I couldn't get even more turned on. But here we are.
But he just... Oh, he's something. He is something.
Yeah.
I had one other friend actually who had been on the show, and then I went and saw him live perform here in Seattle, and I was like, "So, do you want to get us like backstage? I mean, you were on the show. Like, does this mean I get to meet?
You're besties?
Yeah, I'm like, can't we meet? But."
Yeah. And of course, I was like, the thing that I was most sad about is I was like, I thought maybe like afterwards he would like swing back by and be like, oh, if you're ever in town again, let's get dinner. And it's like, of course not, Jacob. This is his job.
Oh, yeah. That's
it's
still,
fine. One day he'll give me his phone number. One day we'll be real friends.
Yes. Okay, so I want to take a short little break here just to share a little story, but also a message from one of our sponsors. Last time that Canada Man, my boyfriend, was in town, he broke his carry-on and now has been using my favorite carry-on suitcase, which is from Away. And it's one of my favorites because it charges my phone, so I don't have to worry about my phone dying while I travel. It's also actually very cute, and usually when I travel, I look like very disheveled. But the fact that now I have this Away suitcase is like the one thing that like makes me look put together and keeps everything really neat and organized, and it's also actually very lightweight. So even though I am usually shoving a lot of stuff in it, it still feels very lightweight to carry up and down steps. And he's been loving it, and I'm excited I get to see him soon so that I can maybe steal it back. But for you guys now who are listening, you can get $20 off of a suitcase and just visit awaytravel.com/Taylor and use promo code Taylor during checkout. Again, that's $20 off a suitcase. Just visit awaytravel.com/Taylor awaytravel.com/Taylor and use promo code Taylor at checkout. Away also offers a 100-day trial, so you can live with it, travel with it, Instagram it, and if at any point you decide it's not for you, you can return it for a full refund with no questions asked. So you really got nothing to lose here. I would definitely try them out. Again, $20 off a suitcase at awaytravel.com/Taylor and use the promo code Taylor during checkout. And now we can get back to the show. And I really hope next time I see him, I get my Away suitcase back. Okay, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but in one of the sections of your book, you actually wrote about how you wrote into The Daily Show when it was Jon Stewart, and you were like, they never wrote back, and now I'm like, and now you're on the fucking Daily Show. Like,
yeah, life is full circle in really weird ways.
Yes.
Also, thank goodness that Trevor Noah is so good at the job and took over from Jon Stewart so well, because The Daily Show lasted long enough for me to get where I was going in my career to have that full circle moment. I mean, praise the Lord for that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yet another thing magical. I owe Trevor. Oh my gosh.
No, that was magical. I was so proud for you, and just it was great. And then you came to Seattle, was one of the cities that you visited in your tour, and
it was my finale. It was my last stop.
Oh, it was. I didn't realize that.
It was. Yeah.
Lovely place to end it off at. And yeah, So I saw you there, and just even the Q&A and everything that you shared was just so great. And I was like, I just love that, I think that the whole topic around gender can be very confusing for people. It can feel really scary. It can feel very intimidating. People don't want to say the wrong thing. People don't want to step on toes. And I think, I might even say things that aren't, politically correct, or that it's just not a part of my world, and so I'm not educated on. And I think it's so important to still lean into having these conversations. And I think it's even more important that, part of what I've seen you share in your talks and everything has just been this sense of openness of it's okay, guys. We should just talk about it. It's not a big deal. Let's just talk.
Well, and I mean, it's also I feel one of the things that I've had to get in touch with as a reality is that it took me, a decade, maybe a little more to figure out my own gender. You know what I mean? And to figure out how to see past what I was taught about how gender should work, and to really open my own mind to the possibilities for my life. So, I feel it wouldn't be very empathetic of me to expect that everyone can figure it out immediately the moment that I do. It's I'm at the end, I got a 10-year head start on a lot of people. So it's yes, in some ways there are now there's more, there's more of a course paved for people. So it's maybe people can catch up in 2 years, 5 years, 3, a little quicker. I think there's now sort of an express lane that we've paved. But it's still, of course it takes people some catch up time,
Yeah.
But I guess, the biggest thing for me that's hard this is it's sort of in jest, but one of the things that, when it comes to being trans in this world, that is a sort of new difficulty in my life, is just that because of the way social media culture works, and because of the way that call out culture works, I feel now there's this people are nervous around me especially when I'm presenting more as femme, when I'm visibly gender nonconforming, people are nervous around me, but it's only because they're anxious about saying the wrong thing, not because I'm trans. They don't actually have anything, they're not actually uncomfortable about anything about who I am in the world, or my energy, or my spirit. They're just oh shit, I don't want to fuck up and mess up and then get yelled at on Twitter.
Yeah. Or then offend you, and then you have you not like them and feel uncomfortable, or feel that they are very politically correct in a lot of ways. And now here they just fucked this up, and now it's shit.
And it's for me, it's I am way too chill of a lady for that energy in my life. Yeah. I just want people to know that it's everything's gonna be fine. And if you fuck something up, it's okay. I fuck things up all the time.
Yeah.
I still fuck up people's I'm a non-binary person who uses they them pronouns professionally, and there are still moments where I fuck it up. There's so much where I fuck up other people's pronouns, and I'm supposed to be the spokesperson for doing good pronouns. So I just think it's so important to remind folks that we are human. We are all trying our damn best in this world. But the number one thing that I ask of people as a trans person is just like for everyone to be chill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, oh my God. We're on FaceTime and your cat just jumped into the shot. What is your kitten's beautiful name?
This is Lily, and she's
kneading
my thighs.
She is so perfect. She's making biscuits.
Yes, she is.
I love her so much. Oh.
She actually, so I'll share this story real quick. So I was away in Whistler for the weekend, and, you know, I've left her for longer than 4 days before, and I have friends that come and check in on her, and this little bitch, I got back 2 nights ago, and I was so exhausted. I was so tired, just like emotionally drained, and was like, oh, I can't wait to get into bed. I was legit in bed at 9 o'clock, okay? I'm a night owl.
I'm proud of you.
I'm a night owl, and I was in bed at 9 o'clock. I was like, homegirl is tired. And I got in bed, and I was like, oh, like, what? Like, it kind of smells. And I was like, is Lily in the bed? Like, did she just use the litter box? Or just like out in the hallway? I was like, she just really dropped one that stunk. And like, I couldn't figure it out. So I leaned over and looked underneath the bed. And I was like, did she like poop underneath the bed while I was gone or something? Like, what the fuck? And then I like rolled over a little bit, like to see if she was on the bed. And there was shit on my bed.
Oh my God, she literally was like, you leave me alone for 4 days, I will shit in your bed.
Like, that was a serious vengeance poop that I was like, that was so personal, and I don't yell at her frequently, and she's usually like very good, like my apartment is clean, I am organized, and the fact that she shat on my bed, I was like
specifically to piss you off.
Oh my God. Yeah. And honestly, I've locked her out of the bedroom. So like when I leave now, the last few days, like when I leave the house, I've like shut the door completely. I'm like, you're not even allowed in there. Like, I'm so disappointed in her.
It's like, it's hard because like half of me is like, wow, what a little asshole. And the other half of me is like, respect.
I know, right? I'm like, okay, message received.
If someone left me alone for 4 days and I had to hang out in an apartment for 4 days, I would poop on the damn couch and be like, fuck you.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, okay, girl, like message received. I get it. Like, I'll stay home. So now since I've been home.
Or maybe you just need your friends to like spend a little more time when they see her.
Yeah. Agreed.
Like she just needs to be, you know, she needs to be entertained. She needs entertainment like all of us. Can you imagine if someone like shut you out, like what you would do to somebody if they shut you out of your Netflix subscription for 4 days? I would be like, excuse me, I'm gonna like, this is how I get my mental health. This is how I entertain myself. This is how I feel okay in the world.
Yes.
Like I am gonna do something crazy to your house. I will poop on your front yard.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, she's such a social cat. Like, she's been attached to my hip since I've been back, and so I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I feel bad, but like, she's a sweetheart. Aside from the fact that she shat on my fucking bed, it's disgusting to throw out my duvet. This is a really important
tangent. I think it's a really important tangent. You know. Because I think we can learn a lot from, like, the way that cats, like, I think we can learn a lot about, like, what does it mean to name your needs, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, what does it mean to name when your partner has violated boundaries that are important to you?
Yeah, how you stand up for yourself and let yourself be seen.
Right. Like, I feel like we should learn examples from, like, how openly and unabashedly aggressive cats will be, you know, like that as feminists we can really we can really learn something from that. We can be like, yeah, that's what we need to do to people who fuck with us.
Yeah, she has no shame in letting me know that she's hungry and she wants to be fed right now. Like on her time. Like she is ready to eat. She will follow me around the house until I feed her and will just meow and literally no shame, just
she's like, it's time, so like you need to figure it out, you know. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like, you know, squeaky puss gets the snack.
Oh, see what you did there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your love and appreciation for Lily. And just cats.
It's another way of affirming gender. You know, that's all it is, really. It's like cat lady is a gender identity, and I want to make sure that you know that I see and affirm your gender identity. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. As I'm wearing, I mean, my crazy cat lady robe.
You're literally wearing a cat. So for listeners, just so that you know, it's a robe. It has 3 different things printed on it. It has the word meow with an exclamation point.
Yep.
And then it has little has little black cats with their little faces, and then it has little white cats that are like a silhouette. Yeah,
and don't worry. I mean, the people that follow me on Instagram know this robe very well.
Yeah, it's chic and also elegant.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So
that's how I feel.
As we label Crazy Cat Lady as a gender identity, we've spoken, we've thrown around some words here, and I just kind of want to give a little bit of like a educational lesson for some people that maybe like are listening and are like, wait, non-binary, like non-conforming, what are they talking about here? So if we can kind of break down a little bit some of the differences with like gender and sex and like the different kinds of gender identity, because I think that whole part is really confusing for people, and it lends to that area that we just talked about where like people are so scared to say the wrong thing and where they don't even approach it in the first place. And so maybe explaining some of this will help with people feeling more confident to just have conversations, and maybe they'll know the right thing to say, or maybe they can just ask, or maybe they can just try to begin with.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, so the baseline thing that I think is very important to name is that like a side effect of living in a world where, people spent like, 100 years building the idea that there are two genders and they must act in this one way.
Yeah.
A side effect of that is that, we're now building an accurate vocabulary around gender for the first time as a culture in a minute, So like, that's when I think about the ways in which trans folks, like, like I feel like teenagers on Tumblr are like, are like the laboratory, like are the new cultural anthropology department of gender for like our whole world, because they're like coming up with so many different ways to describe gender and to name it. And it's important because when we've had this cultural tradition for 100 years of saying that there are only two genders, right? That gender is like reducible to one of two boxes and that's it. That's all you need to know. And so saying actually there's like 40 boxes and that's only a gross underestimation, that there's a plurality of genders that's beyond just one of two options. It's important that we have other words. But the other thing I'll say is that going from 2 boxes to like 40 is fucking confusing. Yeah. Even for me, it's confusing for everybody, right? But the idea is that the more terms we have to describe gender, the more ways of describing gender we have, the more freedom we build for everybody, right? Like everyone benefits from having more options to describe who they are and think about who they are.
Because we are so complex and like we have so many different parts of ourselves, and to be able to actually explore those and have that freedom, like I can imagine can lead to people feeling like they're living a more authentic life and that they're able to express and communicate themselves in a way that feels authentic.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's like the most important term that comes to trans and non-binary folks is gender self-determination.
Okay, I don't think I've heard that one before.
Well, it's like a term that I use a lot that a lot of people don't talk about. But the basic principle is that like, gender self-determination is the idea that everyone deserves the right to decide their gender for themselves. Free from coercion, free from, from harassment, free from harm, free from discrimination, right? That every single human on this planet deserves the right to determine and name their gender for themselves.
And I think like the piece that some people get tripped up on, that they're like, I think that people start to associate gender with sex, and then they're like, well, but you have a penis, so you're a man, or you have a vagina, so you're a woman. And gender is not the same as sex.
Well, right. And also sex, like the idea that sex is even easily classifiable into one of two categories, like isn't true scientifically. Like intersex people are a huge part of the LGBTQI community. That's what the I is for. It stands for intersex.
Yeah.
And, there are tons of people all over the world who are born, with sort of mixed sex characteristics, right? And they have often been the site of stigma and scorn, or erasure or medical abuse, because oftentimes what will happen is that doctors will do surgeries on children, like non-consensual surgeries before a child is even, when you're a baby, to tamper with your body and your genitalia to make it quote unquote conform to what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And it's really dehumanizing. It is a human rights violation. It is not acceptable. And it's not okay that as a culture that medical professionals are so paranoid about people fitting into a male or a female box that they will literally abuse children.
Well, I'm very interested then on, which maybe is a separate podcast / separate conversation or topic, but the kind of debate, I suppose, around circumcision.
Right.
Like where that is somewhat of what you're talking about, where it is kind of this non-consensual surgery that happens on children, on babies, and how, that can lead to some accidents where then people are just trying to fix it. And it's messy.
I mean, I think circumcision is sort of can be tangential potentially, because it's about sort of what are we allowed to do to children's bodies before they can consent to it. But I think that like the level of that the long-term psychological impact of non-consensual surgeries on intersex children, like there are so many studies that show that like the long-term psychological impact on a child when they are told that their body is wrong, it can be life-threatening, right? Like the stigma and the shame and the feelings. Whereas like, with circumcision, there are definitely people who regret being circumcised or who wish that they had not been circumcised. But like, as a circumcised person, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like I've never really like been too worried about it. Like, I don't feel like I've had some adverse psychological outcome that my life has been ruined by. So what I'm not saying is that it's not a worthwhile conversation, but I don't want to, I think the conversation about about surgeries, non-consensual surgeries on intersex children, like that is completely and totally unacceptable. That is child abuse.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's definitely
not okay.
very different than circumcision, because circumcision is just like keeping the penis a penis, but just in a little bit of a different way. Whereas what you're saying,
I mean, like, again, there's a debate to be had there, but I just want to say that, like, for me, I don't consider them to be like, I don't want to have them together, but I think it's important you bring that up. Because, like, obviously it's something that people talk about. When people think about, if it's wrong to do that, if it's so bad to do that to intersex children, then like why do we do that to anyone? And I'm like, well, that's an interesting question, but as a secondary question to first like setting basic medical standards for how to allow intersex kids to have bodily autonomy. And also I can, if you want some like badass intersex activists to talk to, I can absolutely refer you some people to have on the podcast.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of good friends who are intersex.
And so can you just explain a little bit then of like what that means? So that would be someone that like is born and has like a mix of like penis and vagina parts, and then doctors try to correct it to make it one thing, and then they grow up being told that they are this one gender, and then psychologically that's like, they find out later. Like what would that kind of look like?
So, I mean, so there are a bunch of different ways that intersex conditions can appear on a body. There's a bunch of different ways that it can impact both your internal physiology and your external physiology. And what I don't want to pretend is that I'm fully an expert and like a medical expert in all of those different things. So I don't want to, I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. But what I will say is that, if you Google like intersex activists, there's a million things to read about, what that experience can be like for people. And how folks have navigated that experience. And,
if you have any friends, would love to have.
Totally, I'll throw them your way.
That'd be amazing.
But I bring that up because I think it's important to name that even biologically, we are not binary. We are not strictly one of two things. And so, of course, it should come as no surprise that when it comes to the sort of metaphysical part of gender, right, the social part of gender, of course, there are people who feel themselves to be in between or outside of one of two categories, and that's, for me, it's like, yes, I was born with a penis. Yes, I'm a male bodied person, but like, what about like, but I, I've always like in my earliest childhood days, in my earliest memories, in my most pure form of self, I just had a level of femininity, it just was who I was, I don't think it wasn't like something made me gravitate to, tutus in the dress up bin. I just did. And like, for me, the thing I have so much trouble with is that like, I don't get why people are so invested in policing the gender of children, right? Like, why are people so invested in telling children that that the way they're performing their gender is wrong.
Yeah, like, you know, that was that was essentially the opening of your book, was that like your childhood was not yours. And that like just hit so not necessarily hit home for me, but like just hit me like so hard of just like, like that. I've talked a bit on the pod, like with other guests and whatnot, about kind of healing that inner child in themselves and doing that kind of work, like in therapy with, and
honoring the inner child.
Speaking to that inner child, providing empathy for that inner child, allowing that inner child's pain when it comes up to come up, and to take that as an opportunity to actually heal it. You had brought up that in your book, and I'm curious if you want to expand a little bit on how your childhood wasn't really yours and how you were kind of put into this box.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, I mean, it starts so early on because, and it's funny because back in the day, you know, people weren't as prescriptive historically about gender roles with children, at least until you came out of the womb. Because you couldn't know, you know, I mean, knowing the sex of your baby before it comes out of your body is a relatively new historical phenomenon.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a thing. I mean, I think there's more people now that are like, oh, we're going to try to raise our child like gender neutral, and like people trying to experiment with that. But they're, for the most part, the traditional is like, we're having a girl, so her room's going to be pink, and we're having a boy, and so his room's going to be blue, and he's going to be a football player.
Which is funny because even pink and blue like have flipped in the last 100 years.
Yeah, and like why
pink
does
used
that
to be seen as a masculine color? Isn't that weird? Doesn't that blow your mind?
Yeah, well, and it's like even when you spoke a second ago about you know, going to the tutu and being more feminine, and it's like, well, what makes that like more associated with females, and what makes this more male, you know, and just getting into the conversation of like, what does femininity actually mean and look like? And is that just our societal like stereotype? And those are just kind of external things that we're associating with that. And oh yeah.
And that's so true. And that's something I think about myself is it's like, you know, it's funny because it's like in a different culture, who knows how I would have thought about myself? Because maybe what's innate to me is just that I love color and texture and fashion and fabric and you know, and richness of those things. Yeah. Maybe that's what's innate to me, you know, but that in the world we live in order to have access to color and texture and diversity of fabric and interesting fits and forms, you know, and shoes with an architecture and all that kind of stuff, you have to wear women's clothes, you know, like maybe it's just that I just love shiny shit, you know, and that's my true gender is that I'm just like a crow, you know, crows like love shiny stuff. Like maybe that's my true gender, but I happen to live in a world in which loving shiny stuff is coded as feminine, or at least that I don't pick the right shiny stuff to love. You know, like I don't love sports cars or whatever. I don't know, but it's like, so I think about that a lot. It's such a mind fuck because, you know, we like one thing that, you know, academics say all the time that like gender is socially constructed, but by that we just mean that like, that we build gender, right? The idea of what a man is something that we have built as a culture and that we rebuild every day, you know, that we rebuild with every film someone writes, and we rebuild with every, you know, every TV show that gets made, and we rebuild with every parenting book that's written, you know,
with every memoir that's written.
Yes, we rebuild something better. And that's what, for me, like, that's what I'm hoping to do is I'm like, I don't understand why. I mean, if someone told you like, look, we're making an ice cream store and we can either have 2 flavors or we could carry like 30, which would you rather have?
30.
Right.
I like options.
Who would ever be right? Like who would ever be like, no, we're gonna have this like low key, sad, fascist ice cream store where there are only 2 ice cream flavors, and you must pick one. And once you pick it for your child before they are born, they're only ever allowed to eat that flavor. And if they eat the other flavor, they're gonna lose their job and like you know and like be subject to huge social stigma and like violence and whatever. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So like given that we can rebuild gender however we want, why not build it such that you can be in between and it be fine, that you can change what you like over the course of your life, that you're allowed to that you're never going to be treated as a social pariah for wearing a certain silhouette. Because then when it comes down to it, it's like literally who am I hurting by wearing a dress? Nobody. You know, as long as the people who made the dress were paid properly, and as long as the laborers got health care, right? So, like, you know, I'm a socialist, and I think those things are very important. to name, but like assuming that that the dress was ethically sourced, that, you know, everyone who was involved in the production of the dress was protected, and that the environment was not degraded in order to make the dress.
Yes.
In that case, then who am I hurting by wearing a dress? And the answer might be myself if it's a little too tight, but other
or a
than
little
that,
too chilly out.
Right. And so it's like at the base of this, there is nothing transgressive or edgy or radical about being gender nonconforming. It's just a natural part of the human spectrum that we live in. I feel that my gender is deeply natural. It is so normal and easy and simple. We just live in a world where we've all been taught, like, oh, that's a gender nonconforming person. Oh, that's someone that I should abuse or scorn.
Yeah.
And let's just unteach that. Let's just stop teaching kids that gender is one of two things. And it's not that we have to raise our kids as gender neutral. We can be like, hey, there's a lot of things you can choose between. And what's important is not whether you're a boy or a girl. It's about finding what you like, Billy. You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, we don't have to be like, there is no such thing as gender, Billy. Billy, gender is not real. We can be like, gender is real. Like, gender is the thing that a lot of people feel, and you can feel whatever you want. Some people who have penises feel more like boys. Some people who have penises feel more like girls. Some people who have penises don't really feel like either, or feel like both sometimes. And it's no big deal, Billy, and you can do whatever you want. Like, you know, but also please wash your hands.
Yes. Please wash them.
You know, or like, please be nice to other people, or like, you know, there are lessons worth teaching to our children, but gender policing is not worth teaching our children.
Yeah. So I want to share a little bit. I think my first experience working with someone in like a therapeutic setting around gender was she was 12 years old, and she was okay with being called she, but she also considered herself to be gender fluid and pansexual. And I remember, like, this was during my internship, and I remember just being like, damn, like, that's so much just to be thinking about at that age. And when I think about like that, when I was 12, if I were like trying to figure out like what my gender is and like what I was attracted to, like, I guess it kind of would have made sense at that period in life. But at the same time, it just was so not what I was expecting to come through the door, and was like, okay, like, I got to learn a little bit more about this, and like, we're going to work through this together. And it was slightly difficult because I do remember, you know, her mom definitely wanted her to be the stereotypical female girl, you know, and she not only had all this other pain and things that she was dealing with, but, you know, some days she was just like, some days I feel like I want to dress more masculine, and some days I feel, you know, more like I want to experiment with what it would be like to be a boy, and other days I want to wear a dress and I feel more like a girl. And she was just kind of like, she just wanted to be able to explore that. And I was like, well, go you, explore it.
Yeah. And like, that's all we need to say to kids. People act like, you know, I feel like a lot of parents talk to me all the time, like, what do I do with my gender nonconforming kid? Or like, I'm expecting, and what do I do? And I'm like, look, dealing with the social consequences, it will be difficult, right? Like, I don't want to oversimplify that, because people can be really, really mean, you know? And if you have a gender nonconforming child, odds are some people are going to be really mean to you about not curtailing your child's behavior as if it needs to be curtailed, right? And some people are going to be really mean to your kid about being different. But the reality is, it's like, look, you can either affirm your kid at home and help support them as much as you can in dealing with a world that is maybe not always going to be affirming of who they are. Or you can bully them at home too. And it's like, why add more bullying and stigma and harassment into their lives? Like, your home should be your home. It should be your safe place where you don't have to worry about anyone being mean to you, where you feel safe wearing whatever you want to wear, where you feel okay expressing your gender. And people feel like, well, if I affirm my kid at home, then they're going to learn that then I'm not protecting them from the outside world. And I'm like, no, you're just taking the abuse of the outside world as your personal responsibility. Like, don't do that. Don't abuse your child. You
That's
know,
such
like
a good
love on
point.
your kid, you know, and like you don't need to prepare your kid. Like, because the thing is, like, this idea that you can like train your kid out of their gender, that's bullshit. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, believe me, people tried to train me out of mine.
Yeah.
You know, if I could train myself out of my gender, like, you know, then it would have happened already, right? Like, there's just something innate here.
Yeah, it's I remember there was a part in your book where you wrote about your graduation and your dad kind of asking like, okay, can you just please dress normally for this? And you were like, well, I haven't really thought about it yet, but like, I'm going to wear what I want to wear. Like, this is my graduation. And A, thought it was amazing how you stood up for yourself. But B, I think that even in that sentiment of like, you know, as a parent being like, can you please just like wear a dress? It's like in some way in that sentiment is this sense of wanting to protect you from harm, is wanting to protect themselves from harm.
Right.
And then at the end you had like a chapter of like Dear Mom and Dad, and like the letter you wrote to your dad was like so sweet. And
He's like such a sweetie.
I was like starting to tear up. I was like, this is like so sentimental and like just so sweet, because it was like you essentially, and even kind of what you said even at the last book tour here in Seattle was just like, you know, your parents too have came such a long way, or at least your dad, and that they've had to learn so much about this, and where
both my mom and my dad, you know, they've learned so much.
Yeah, and where you've kind of, at least in that chapter, you had said, you know, that like he doesn't necessarily show his love through talking, and that's not stereotypically how men do that, but of noticing the small things where they're expressing that they love you, and where, you know, if anyone's allowed to, you know, call you by the wrong pronoun or whatever, it's going to be your mom, because like she gave birth to you, and just like that sense of empathy and just that sense of like love was like so clear to me, and I was just like, oh, Jacob, it's so sweet.
We have some alarms. We have some sirens coming by on my end.
That's the LA
do you want me to wait them out, or should we keep talking?
You're good. You can keep
they're
going.
Gone now. They're gone. But no, I mean, like, that's the thing too. Yeah, like with my parents, you know, I think that they really struggled with this idea of whether or not do we encourage our child to butch it up so that he'll be protected, or do we allow him to just live as he is, you know? And I think that ultimately trying to encouraging your child to suppress their gender so that the rest of as a form of protection, it just never works. Yeah. I think if you talk to any trans person who was coerced into being a boy or being a girl kind of against their will, but for quote unquote their protection, if you ask them, would you have rather just had parents who said be who you want to be and not fuck up anyone who tries to fuck you up? Like everyone would say yes, you know? And that's the other thing is it's like, you know, I think the other thing that happens, and this is like, I empathize with this position because I've been there too, right? Like my gender has inadvertently made me be an activist in this world, you know, it wasn't by choice. Like whether or not I wanted to be an activist, like in order to survive, I had to learn that skill set. Yeah. And the same thing is true of any parent of a trans or gender nonconforming kid. You actually just have to learn to be an activist, you know? And that's really hard for a lot of people because being an activist is hard and it's a skill set that not everyone's taught, you know, like it's, you know, not every mom knows how to like, you know, march into her office and say, look, colleagues, like, this is my kid. This is what they wear. And everyone shut the fuck up about it. You know, like not every dad is equipped with the skills to march into the school board and be like, my kid is getting bullied by fucking Chester. Chester's mom isn't doing anything about it. Chester's dad isn't doing anything about it. Principal fucking, you know, Radcliffe isn't doing anything about it. Yeah. And like, y'all need to fix this or else I'm going to call the ACLU. You know, like everyone doesn't know that skill set, and it's actually what you have to have in order to protect your trans kid in this world sometimes. So it's, you know, I wish there was, I feel like we still have a lot of resource development that we need to build, but I do think that with like the internet, and at least access to that information is a lot easier. You know, like access to the emotional support, still complicated, still hard to find sometimes, but access to like at least information about like to know that you're not alone, to know that other people are going through what you're going through, to figure out how to navigate it. That's at least there.
And in terms of that, like emotional support, I'm curious if therapy has played a role for you throughout your life, or how you did find that kind of emotional support, and what that looked like.
Yeah. Well, therapy still plays an active role in my life. And it should have played an active role in my life a lot more often. If you are out there and you are listening to this podcast and you are not in therapy, go figure out why you're not. Because everyone, like, no one doesn't not need to be in therapy.
Yep.
That was a lot of negatives. That was like a triple negative. But everyone needs to be in therapy.
Yes. I always plug this, and it's not an ad, and I wish they would be an ad, but psychologytoday.com is a great resource to, like, look up therapists in your area. You just enter your zip code. Right. They have filters for your insurance and the issues you want to discuss, and all of that. So highly recommend using that if you want to find a therapist.
Definitely, I mean, like, a really emotional moment for me was because my current therapist, like, in LA, she played a huge role in supporting me and helping me process things as I, put this book out, both in terms of, like, writing the thing and exploring everything that it required, but also in terms of, putting my story out into the world and dealing with all of those feelings.
It's a lot of vulnerability there to handle.
It's a fuck ton of vulnerability. And some days I think I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But then other days it's like, it's the blessing of a lifetime. I mean, there's kind of this ultimate freedom in being this vulnerable. I was going to say,
I'm sure it's, like, very empowering in a way, because it's kind of the ultimate, like, owning yourself, which literally it's like, it's, as the title is Sissy, that's like you kind of taking a word that would be used negatively against you and being like, yeah, no, like, this is my shit. And when you do take that step to really own it in such a public way, I think that's super empowering, and you no longer have to kind of act like you're something else or be this other thing to please people. And, like, that's, as a woman, I experience that in some ways, but I can't even imagine being a trans woman as to where that is just so exaggerated, and it's got to be just exhausting to even attempt.
Well, I mean, I think misogyny is exhausting everywhere for anyone who's experiencing it, and so I don't feel like we even need to explore hierarchies of misogyny. We can just be like, it's all exhausting. Okay.
Yep.
Like, intersectionality is important. We can talk about intersectionalities of misogyny, but we don't need to talk about hierarchies of misogyny.
Yes.
Because the moment we're doing that, we're kind of all losing. Because like how much you're fucked over by misogyny shouldn't be a contest.
Yes. All pain is pain.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think there is something really powerful for me, like, publishing a book with Sissy as the title, elegantly designed with glossy print, and a beautiful illustration of my face next to it. That honestly, like, if you ever release a book, don't put your actual portrait on the cover, because if you put an illustration of your face, it's like your face, but even better. You know what I mean? It's like your face, but all the lines are cleaned up, and you don't have to worry about if you had a fucking pimple that day. You know what I mean? It's so great. Like, illustration.
Good call.
On a book cover, decision. And also, like my neck is like 12 years long in this illustration. Like, I actually held it up to my real head, and I was like, well, the facial proportions are kind of right, but the neck is way too fucking long.
The neck is long.
That's also because I have terrible posture and I'm constantly slouching. But anyway, like, for me, putting Sissy on the cover of my book, it feels like my I think this is the right movie reference. It feels like my Pretty Woman moment, where I walk back into the store and I'm like, I'm back, and actually I'm wealthy.
Yes.
Like, I'm back, and you should have treated me better.
Yes.
It feels my way of, like, returning to all the people who tried to screw me over and being like, oh, you thought you won? Hi, I'm back, and I'm better than
ever.
Hey there. Yeah. Little, like, hands under the chin, kind of, like, head cocked, like, oh.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And I'm very happy to hear that therapy has been an important part in all of this for you. And as a sense of emotional support, and, as you go through relationships, and, we talked a little bit about, like, how your family has coped and all of that. And at the event, someone asked you a question about sex, and that just, I really appreciated your very honest response to that, of, like, figuring it out. I guess I wonder if there's anything that you can kind of say to touch on that, where, trying to go about finding someone, and that like matches with that when there are so many different levels and the whole spectrum per se of gender of where you kind of meet someone on that, when it's not just this stereotypical black or white of like heterosexual or homosexual and like of male or female. And yeah.
I mean, I joke that the movement I care most about, the social justice movement I care most deeply about, is not the trans movement, but is about bi and pansexual dudes coming out and claiming their shit.
Yeah.
But because the trans movement being successful can get me laid, but the bi and pansexual movement being successful is a very important aspect in me getting laid. You know, so like I have a social justice investment in it, but it's also a much more selfish investment where I'm like, look, I need you to like come out so that you can come in. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and I also, I think it's also just so important for us to not be ashamed to, because we live in a culture where if you say that you're not having success in getting access to the intimacy or romance or sex that you would like, we live in a culture that's very victim blamey about that. That's like, oh, well, like, you clearly just don't have the right social graces. Yeah. Or, well, then you must not be trying hard enough. Or like, oh, this is probably just because you're ugly.
Yeah. Probably because you didn't like smile enough and like weren't positive.
Right. Like that, like we always blame the individual for not having a sex life. Yeah. And not having the intimacy in their life that they would like, and not having the partnership that they would like. And the reality is that like not having access to partnership and not having access to sexual partners and not having access to a sexual practice that feels good for you is part of how people have been oppressed for generations.
Yeah.
Right? Like part of one of the biggest ways that oppressors get you is by denying you the ability to feel beautiful. And that is like an intersectional call to action that all of us need to benefit from, right? Like no one should be told that their body or anything about who they are makes them unlovable or unfuckable. Like anytime the world tells you that is oppression, that is oppressive. And we live in a world where sexuality is like sexual orientation is not constructed, but sexuality very much is. What we find hot, I'm so like the more I think about it, and actually in the process of writing this book, I don't write a lot about my sexuality. I write some about it, but I joke a lot. I mean, I joke around the edges. I think that a book sort of more about my journey as a sexual person is a later work that will come in my life. So get ready for that juicy follow-up world.
Can't wait.
One thing that just I think about is I'm like, literally my sexuality was programmed by like some fucking terrible cisgender white dude in a suit at Disney who decided what shows got greenlit and what shows I was allowed to watch and what characters could star in those shows. Like literally some skeezy dude in Hollywood decided like what I would be programmed to want. And like, fuck him.
Yeah.
He sucks. He's terrible. Like, what the fuck? That's awful. Like, and that like these curators of media and culture have so much power to determine whether or not we are able to find people authentically beautiful, And because the reality is that like by nature, we are not like, we do not think that curvy bodies and thick bodies are ugly. By nature, we're very attracted to them.
Yes.
By nature, people are attracted to like having more to hold. By nature, every person is attractive to some people. Yeah. But then we live in a world where culturally we're programmed to ignore some of our desires and feel shame about some of our desires and feel, able to socially express other desires. And I resent that the world sent all these messages to people who normally would find someone like me really hot, that their desire of me means that they're a freak.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, you might be a freak in the great way, but you're certainly not a freak in the bad way, honey. You know what I mean? And I would appreciate a freak in the good way, in the good sense of freak. Like I need a freak, I need I'm like, I want a lady in the streets and, freak in the bed. Yeah. But the idea that there's something deviant about thinking that trans people are hot. Yeah. The fact that I just want to tell the dudes of the world, which I am, punished by the universe to be attracted to. People talk about conversion therapy is like the worst terrible thing. Like this idea that you can like convert queer people into straight people or trans people into cisgender people. It's garbage. It doesn't work. But there's a part of me that wish it did, because if I could make myself interested in women, then I would medically transition and just be a trans lesbian. You know, it would be fabulous. Oh my God, that's like my dream. Yes. But I am cursed to be attracted to predominantly men and masculine center people. And so what I need to say to all the boys out there is, if you see me with my like big, tall, beautiful legs that are a little fuzzy in my heels, and you look at me in that cute little skirt or that beautiful gown and you think, or you just like twitch a little in your pants. Listen to that. You know?
Just let it be there. Feel it for a second.
Yeah, like let me know. You know, you can just be like, hey, like I don't know what this is about, but I had a little twitch down there. What do you think? And then I'll be like, I'm actually very interested in exploring that twitch. Let's talk. Like, you know?
Yeah. And so I imagine then that any of those kinds of interactions for you have had to happen. I don't know. Do those kinds of interactions just happen like very naturally and authentically, or is that typically something that like has to be in a way set up ahead of time, like meeting someone online that you know that they're like interested in all these kinds of things, or is it like, I don't know. I
mean, I feel like it's pretty rough either way, because online, like the way that we, you know, like Grindr is like such a fucking waste of time for me, you know, even though that's what everyone would think would be the place I'd find people. And, you know, I feel like the success, I mean, I don't know what the recipe for success is for my dating life yet, but I just like want, you know, I want to stand in solidarity with all of the perpetually single femmes who can't seem to like find a partner who knows how to like really honor them and not be intimidated by them and like, you know, like celebrate their real attraction.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not alone in that. Like there's so many people who just like, who are super successful in life, who have incredible social functioning, you know, who are brilliant, who are talented, who are charismatic, who have great careers, whatever, who are, you know, and who on paper should easily be able to find access to partnership. But then some people just like don't know how to not be intimidated by that, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
it's weird. It's confusing. You know, but that's the biggest thing, you know, I feel like that's a big frontier in terms of my own self-love. It's like, I don't yet know how to exist in my gender in front of other people and not just feel ugly. You know, I don't know that yet. In my own home, like when I get ready and when I look at a picture of myself, don't get it twisted. I look at it and I'm like, oh wow, like you're a sexy fucking motherfucker. You know, like I look at a picture of me, like I wore this gown the other day that was like this champagne kind of nude gown with like lace head to toe.
I love
with,
a
like,
nude. Love a nude.
Yes, with like it was my first time doing a nude gown, and I was like, whoa, I've been missing something. You know, and it had clear sequins like sewn up and down to the whole thing, so they don't read as color, but then like when the light hits it, it's gorgeous. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, what we know is that you deserve to get pounded tonight.
Yes.
What we are not certain of is that will actually happen.
Yes.
You know? I was like, you in this dress, like you deserve to find someone who wants to leave this on the floor. And there are people out there who want to leave this on the floor. Yeah. But like, you know, I just know the realities of how people have been cultured and what people have been taught. And part of me thinks that the more likely strategy for me is that I'm just going to be a cougar, because I'm going to have to I'm going to have to be really successful as an activist and sort of change what the next generation is allowed to be attracted to. And then they'll be able to be like, oh, hi. And I'll be like, hello, I'm like a respectable 37-year-old professional lady. You are a 23-year-old, like up and coming whatever. And I guess now we're dating.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I would also imagine that being within this kind of activist culture, that not only are you then in a way like setting an example and showing where people can be attracted to someone that looks like you, but then also being in a community of people where people would be able to actually explore their attractiveness to you.
Right. And figuring that out is hard because it's not gay men necessarily. You know,
Yeah.
like there are some gay men, there's some men who spend time, gay men who spend time in the, you know, gay community that are like, that have a legitimately queer sexuality where like they're really into feminine energy, like in a male body, you know, that they're really into kind of like a properly queer attraction.
Yeah.
And I feel like most gay men are like, I'm a dude, I'm attracted to dudes. That's just how it is. You're not really a dude. And I'm like, true, fair.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, figuring out, and there aren't spaces where like bi and pansexual men gather. You know, there just aren't spaces. Those spaces don't exist, for, at least that I know of.
Yeah.
And if those spaces do exist and I don't know of them, excuse me, where is my invitation?
Yes.
So like, you know, so I think it's, you know, it's like finding, like figuring out how to meet people when there aren't venues set up specifically for you to do that is difficult. And then also it's like, when I think about the mindset of a prospective partner, you know, if you're legitimately a bi or pansexual dude and, you know, and you experience authentic attraction to like cisgender dudes, cisgender women, like trans folks, and like gender nonconforming people. It's like, part of me is like, yeah, I mean, I can see how it would be extremely socially inconvenient to date someone like me, because you'd have to kind of come out to your entire circle of friends that like, this is someone that you're attracted to. And, you know, and like coming out as the partner of a trans person takes a ton of courage, and there are not very many good role models out there for that, you know, and we need more role models for that. Like trans attracted people need icons. They need characters in television. We need cultural signaling that this is okay, so that it doesn't feel like such a site of stigma, and it doesn't feel like such a site of shame.
Yeah. Well, and it is, I think, also, like you said earlier, broadening the scope of what is beautiful.
Right. Yeah. Like body positive activism is like the activism I care about the most.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of the world telling me that I'm ugly.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of it. I'm like, I am not. Empirically, I'm not. And it's because empirically,
like you just said empirically.
Yeah,
I was going to say, yeah, you're really not. And you're like, empirically, I'm not.
No, like studies have shown that I'm fucking gorgeous. You know what I mean? Like I commissioned a a bipartisan, you know, unbiased scientific study, and the results are that I'm a fucking hot piece of ass. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I've been verified as attractive by the council. So everyone needs to get on board with that.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. And even as we talk about all of this, you had... Sorry.
Wow. Whew, I'm sweating now.
I think that might have been my favorite part of this whole episode. But you to kind of piggyback off of like what is beautiful, you've suggested that like everyone, you know, experiments with their gender, and a lot of the ways that we think about that are external, with like putting on a dress or wearing a suit. And I'm curious then if that is really the basis at which we are identifying and labeling gender at, and then also if there are ways that people can experiment and explore that gender that's not necessarily an outward projection, if that makes sense.
No, totally. Because it's like this idea that like clothes make the man is kind of stale, you know, that clothes make the woman. It's like, no, like that's like, it gets so much deeper than that. And I guess what I would say to that is that, you know, aesthetics and fashion and clothing and accessories and whatever, to me, they are tools for spiritual exploration.
True. That was fantastic. That needs to be a quote somewhere on like an Instagram feed. Like that was that was
you know,
good.
that like things and like again, and that's because I want to be very clear, right? Like there is nothing shallow about trying on lipstick for the first time in your life. You know, like there is nothing shallow about seeing what your face looks like in some, like, you know, with an adornment that you're not used to. There's nothing shallow in wearing a different cut that allows you to tap into an energy that you've never felt before. You know, like I think that it's important to not lose the forest for the trees, right? That yes, these things are all just garments. Yes, they're all just accessories. Yes, it's just makeup. Yes, it's just a bow tie, whatever. But given the cultural weight that those objects have, they are tools that we use to access a spiritual truth and a spiritual level of healing, you know? And in the same way that, like, you know, you can look at a rosary and say, it's just beads. You can look at a cross and be like, it's just wood, you know? You can look at a menorah and be like, that's just brass. You know, like these objects that we endow our spirituality and our self-care and our you know, our emotional journeys in are just objects, but they do so much more for us than just that. So I think it's important to name that gender exploration is a spiritual and sacred enterprise. It is everyone's spiritual right to explore their gender and figure out and explore their selfhood via gender. And so, you know, yeah, I don't want to underplay just how important that is.
Yeah, that was so wonderfully said.
Thank
Wonderfully
you.
said.
I love doing podcasts because I synthesize shit that I've never synthesized before, or say things in ways that I haven't quite said before.
Yes.
You know, it's like I feel like when you do like a TV interview where you're like with Katie Couric or whatever, like you have to stick to your talking points and you don't make any new discoveries. But when you're doing a podcast, you just are kind of like, we're just chatting willy-nilly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I hadn't said it like that before. That's an interesting way to put that. Should have put that in my book. Oh, well, it's already printed.
Yep. Save it for the next one.
Yep. Save it for the next one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could literally go on for like a whole another hour and talk with you more about all of this because you're wonderful.
We'll have to do
and
that
I love
in person
talking
sometime soon.
I know. We definitely should. I might be in LA, and if I am, I will definitely let you know. But yeah, do we want to end off with a little reading from?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'd be cute. I'll end by reading a little bit.
Yes.
So for anyone who's listening at home who already has it, we're reading from page 56. Yes. And I'm talking, this is a section about my grandmother. And so the passage before it is talking about sort of places like how a lot of the world was kind of hostile to my femininity. So that's kind of what we're leading in with.
Okay.
There were a few exceptions to this rule, my grandmother's house being one of them. My grandmother on my mom's side was a classy, sweet, kind Southern woman who'd learned to live in a more open-minded way in the post-Jim Crow South. She wasn't perfect, but as far as old white Southern grandmas go, she was pretty dang sweet, and I loved her ceaselessly. Also, she wore geometric print windbreakers from the 1980s well into the 2000s, which certainly didn't hurt. She held on to some of the pieces in her wardrobe long enough that they actually became ahead of their time again. I was always proud of her for that. If she were alive today, she would have rocked millennial pink. Part of the love that I shared with my grandmother was based in the fact that she adored my sweetness, my kindness, my compassion, and my gentle manner. I don't know what exactly it was that enabled her to be so kind, affirming, and unrelenting in her support of my femininity, but I think it might have had something to do with being old enough not to give a fuck. Unlike many of the adults in my life, she never seemed worried about whether I was sufficiently manly. In fact, she would have been shocked and supremely disapproving if I'd ever lashed out in anger or been physically violent. Where everyone else attempted to curtail or turn a blind eye to my femininity, my grandmother looked it in the face, unashamed and unintimidated. She never would have said it this way, but in my mind, I wasn't mom's little boy or dad's little sport. I was grandma's little sissy. Weekends at grandma's house consisted of all my favorite things. We'd run to the market to get fresh chicken salad and veggies, cook together, knit quietly, sip sweet tea, and play cards or Rummikub until about 9:30 p.m., which is when my grandma would fall asleep, automatically, as if on autopilot, no matter where she was sitting. I would spend hours rifling through her jewelry collection and trying things on when she wasn't looking. When we got ready to go to church or to dinner, she'd let me help her pick out her earrings and brooches, and I'd always choose the ones with the sparkliest, biggest, gaudiest costume gems. The most exciting trip I ever took to my grandmother's house was when I was 7, and we spent the whole weekend alone, just me and my grandma. No dad or mom to worry about, no annoying older brother to contend with, just us girls. I felt like I'd died and gone to heaven, or, more accurately, like I'd died and been transported into an episode of The Golden Girls. Note, is there even a difference? My grandma would play the character of Rose, sweet, funny, and warm, but oblivious to what was going on around her, notably the fact that her grandson was obviously a homosexual. And I would play Blanche, minus the sex, but with Dorothy's wardrobe, No one would have to play Sophia because call me a hypocrite or a blasphemer or edgy or whatever you like. She's my least favorite character. During that trip, my grandmother and I had the best time. She taught me to memorize the Lord's Prayer, how to skip, which, shockingly, I'd never learned to do myself, and how to blow a bubble with gum. After that trip, I went from being an underinformed princess to being a fully equipped queen. I could now skip up to my enemies on the playground, blow a bubble in their face, insult them while smacking my gum, and, when they got angry at me, passive-aggressively remind them that God forgives us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, Susan. In reality, I probably couldn't have gotten away with that on the playground, but it was nice to know that I could try.
You are so amazing, and I love every bit of that.
God forgives us our trespasses as we forgive others.
Susan! That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for A, putting out this amazing memoir, B, for coming on the pod and sharing all of this with us today. And if people want to get your book, if people want to check you out, why don't you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, well, first follow me on @Jacob Tobia, JACOBTOBIA. It's across every platform. And if you want to get the book, I would love if you could go buy it at your independent bookseller in your neighborhood or town. If they don't have it on order, I'm sure they'll order it specifically for you. But they should have it in stock. But if you can't do that, or if you don't have the time to do that, then you can also get it anywhere else books are sold, like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of it. Books A Million. Wonderful. It's there.
I love that you plugged the independent local bookstores. And there was
I love them.
There was another piece, just maybe a little anecdote here that you could share, that you shared at the Seattle event here, of what you were hoping people would do with your book and where they would, the places that they would put it.
Yes. So also, when you're finished with your book, if you're trying to Marie Kondo your house or declutter, but you finished the book and you loved it, it meant something to you, but you want to release it onto the world, you could donate it to Goodwill. I love Goodwill. But also consider hiding it in a men's restroom in a bathroom stall. Yes. So that some unwitting man who probably needs a lot of gender-based healing that he doesn't know he needs will go in there simply to poop and will leave enlightened.
Fucking love it. Fucking love it. Thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, this was so fun.
Loved having you on. That does it for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And I really hope you guys learned a lot from this episode. I hope there's a lot that you guys can take away and expand your knowledge on. Do your own kind of research, welcome new people into your social groups, and, step outside of your comfort zone and your typical bubble and meet other people. And this is just a wonderful episode. I could continue for a whole nother hour on this topic. But just want to say thank you guys again for tuning in, and feel free to head over to iTunes and leave a review or a rating. I love seeing what you guys are liking about the show, and maybe what your favorite episode is. And I really hope you guys check out Jacob's book, Sissy, and you can find that in the episode notes. And that really all does it for today. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will talk to you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.